All right. Hey leaders, so one of the things that we're really going after is building content knowledge. One of the noticings right now is that as it relates to IPM structure, unit unpacking structures, we're doing a really good job of not passing go on unpacking the standard. Nice job. And leaders are coming with their own preparation of like the knows and the shows, so you're coming physically prepared. Keep doing that. The push and the thing that we have to do a better job of is how are we using this part of IPM, this part of unit unpacking to build content knowledge in others, meaning how are we making this a teaching opportunity, not just going through the motions of having people chart and then filling in things. Here is how I think about how I'm going to build content knowledge as I prepare for IPM. Here's an example for next week. So fourth grade ELA is starting unit 2, in which they're going to be going after this focus question of how does the setting affect the characters or speakers in the text. So lessons 1 through 10 is going to be focused all on the idea of the setting. The text that they're reading is taking place on Venus. While it's taking place on Venus, there are some fictional elements of the text, like it's not actual real thing. For example, it's civilization on Venus. There are things about Venus, for example, it's always raining and then the sun comes out every 7 years, things that are not true. Because of that, this genre is science fiction. With this genre being science fiction, our students need to know and understand that yes, Venus is a real place. However, this text is a fictional story using the element of something that could be like futuristic or elements of what it could be like on this place, but it is not true. So there's like 2 things that teachers need to hold true. They need to, 1, make sure that students aren't getting confused with the fact that these are not all facts in the text, but also thinking about what are the elements of fiction, which we know when it comes to the genre-based thinking jobs of fiction, we have our characters, we have the setting, we have the problem, the solution, the lesson learned. That is how they should be thinking about this through a scientific lens. Part of what students are going to be doing is having questions and tasks related to this standard, RL41. You will notice I already have it charted at the top. This is a quick hit. At this point, we should always be writing out the full standard before we start IPMs or unit unpackings. The reason why. Our teachers and some of us don't yet know them just by saying RL41. Having it written out allows everyone to read it, so it should sound like this. Everyone, we're going to be unpacking RL41. Let's read it together. Go. Refer to details and examples in the text when explaining what the character says explicitly when drawing inferences from the text. RL41, read it again, and now say it in your own words. Give think time. Everyone's reading it again. Turn and talk, say it in your own words. RL41 means that students should be able to go back to a text and using something from the text, information from the text, based on things that are actually literally there, meaning like it could be something that's written in a text and they can just go back and find it, and knowing like that's the explicit, meaning it's right there, it tells you what it is. Or it can be implicit, meaning that they're going to have to draw conclusions or make inferences to make sense of what the author meant by that. Saying it in my own words. We read it, we said it in our own words, and now we're going to move to charting the know and the show. The thing that you all are already doing, keep doing it, is having people get up and chart first without the facilitator saying anything. Keep doing that. What's happening though is people are charting things or they're getting stuck. This is where you go into teacher mode. You're gonna use all of the thinking action steps that we want teachers to do as you facilitate to unpack content. Here is how I plan to do that. I know there are 2 big conceptual knows that I want to make sure teachers are able to pull out. The first one is that the text communicates explicit and implicit information. A huge example that comes up in this unit 4 is the use of metaphor. A metaphor is implicit because with a metaphor, you cannot just read a metaphor. It doesn't mean what it says. You have to make an inference about it, so it makes it implicit. So I'm specifically pulling out metaphor. The other things that they need to know, and I switched this order, so it's over here. Evidence proves thinking, meaning you cannot just say, I know this because, and then read from a text. No, great readers know that you can use words, actions, descriptions in a story to reveal character motivation, character traits, or to reveal the theme. So great readers are able to use the words, use the actions, use the things in the text to then come up with the trait, the motivation, or the theme. That's what I want people to be able to pull out. I want them to also know in terms of how students do this. The first one is finding the right part of the text. At this point in fourth grade, we should not be telling students, turn to this part of the text. We should be able to ask a question, and then effort, we're expecting that they are doing their own due diligence to go back and find it. That is what effort looks like. Another thing is evidence proves thinking. We should hear students say things like, I infer this to be true. I know this because the text says this, and that makes me think. It cannot stop at what the text says. It has to go beyond what the text said, putting what they know, their schema or their background knowledge, pairing it with the text to make the inference. And that is not just as simple as just reading from the text. So I want to hear them go beyond the text. That is also the expectation for effort. As it relates to this last point, they need to, I mentioned it already, go beyond quoting the text. So when I think about that, and I know that that's the case, I'm going to plan for it. One, of course, I have my this is like my cheat sheet that's going to be covered up. They won't see this, but I already know what my cheat sheet says. So I'm going to go into the lesson, into the text, and pull out, okay, if they don't say this, what example could I give them to prompt them to do the thinking the way the student needs to do the thinking? If this was math, you could say what question in the lesson plan or where in the lesson, where in the independent work directly ties to the standard. I'm going to say that one more time. In order to prepare to build content knowledge, I need to think about how can I make the thinking visible for the teachers by having them do the thinking in real time. Meaning I'm going to have the examples from the text, or if it's math, I'm going to have the problem set, have them actually think aloud about it, and then make it transferable. Here's an example of what that could sound like. As I'm walking around, I'm not seeing people actually pull out that text can communicate explicit and implicit, and this idea of a metaphor. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say, everyone, I want you to pause where you are. So go ahead, cap your marker, stay standing though. There's a part of the lesson in which you write this example on the board. Here's the example. Everyone, let's read the example out loud. Her chair was a four-legged island in the middle of a giant white pond on the kitchen floor. As a reader, what is it that you are thinking about as you process and comprehend this sentence? Everyone just think about it. What are you thinking about as you read the sentence? If you need to read it again, do that in your head. I'm letting people read it again. What are you thinking about as you read this sentence? I'm calling on someone. I am listening to hear if they're saying, I'm not telling them. I want to hear someone say, this is not literal. This is not explicit. We know that a four-legged island, a chair is not a four-legged island. So they should be comprehending the fact that the author wrote this in a figurative way. The author is expecting that we make an inference about what this means. The author is not expecting us to just read this and take it based on what the words say on the paper. So I'm listening for it. I'm listening for it. If someone says it, then I'm going to stamp it. So what do students need to understand when they read a sentence like this? Because remember, it's not going to say this is implicit or this is explicit. What do they need to understand, everyone? I'll give them time to think about it. I'll have them talk about it, and then I need to stamp. They need to know when there is a sentence in which the author is using figurative language to communicate information. And then I'm going to go a step further if this word doesn't come on. What is the content word that refers to this kind of sentence? Everyone think about it. What is this called? I am doing this because I am not going to assume that all the teachers in the room know what this is called. I want to check for understanding. Everyone say it out loud. Say it out loud. I would hope to hear 100% of teachers say metaphor. Then I would say, what is a metaphor? Cold call. I want to hear someone say a metaphor is when we are comparing two things that are not the same to help make meaning around one of those things. What's being compared? The chair is being compared to a pond in an island. With that, you can make meaning. Oh, that means that the chair is stuck in the middle of the milk, almost as if, and the person is on the chair, as if they're in the middle of an island and like they're feeling helpless, like they're feeling like they can't go anywhere because they're in the middle of this big milk mess. So that's the real meaning behind it. I was able to think about, based on my understanding of the lesson, what example can I pull out? The real student thinking. I'm not just making up things, I'm using the lesson. I was able to ask questions to the teachers in the room to get them to do the thinking. Once they did the thinking, then I asked and I said to them, okay, stamp for me what you have to know based on that example. Great, let's chart that. The same thing is true for math. In fourth grade math, one of the things that they are going to be working on is multiplying fractions. So there is an example that looked like this. When it comes to multiplying fractions and whole numbers, our students need to understand something and they need to do something. As we listen, teachers may not be able to pull out what do they need to understand. So I'm going to say, everyone, turn to the first question in your exit ticket. Pull out your exemplar. How did you solve this problem? Every step that you solve, say why you did that or what you know about math that let you know you were able to do that. You would hear teachers say, the first thing I did was I multiplied 1 times 3, I got 3, and then I put the 4. And then what I would say to teachers is, okay, pause. You said you multiplied 1 times 3. How did you know to multiply 1 times 3? What do you know about math? I'm expecting to hear them say, what I know is that when we multiply fractions, we multiply across. Mathematicians understand when you multiply fractions, you multiply across. You multiply numerators, you multiply the denominators. Then what I would say is, okay, well, if you multiply across, the 3 isn't across from the 1 because the 3 is a whole number. What do we need to understand about the number 3 as it relates to multiplying across? Because I know when it's 1/4 times 3/4, I know, okay, we multiply across, that's 3/16. So when you say we multiply across, that's what we do. Help me understand, what else do you know about this? I'm listening and then I'm going to send them back into a turn and talk. I'm expecting to hear someone say, I know that 3 is the same as this. Because 3 is the numerator, 1 is the denominator, but we don't use that in our number system when we're talking about whole numbers. We just put the number. So you still are multiplying across because essentially what you're doing is multiplying this times this, which is the same. As you go into IPM, unit unpackings, everything that you are doing, after you plan your know and show chart, you need to go and identify the problems or the parts of the text where it comes up. I'm looking to see you give examples to push people to do the thinking. Do not just tell them what's on your paper. That is not going to help them learn the content.